How are you, my loves, from the Meat Lover channel? Today's real life infidelity story is going to be a bit controversial. The ending will surprise everyone. Good afternoon to everyone on this wonderful channel that I love to follow. I listen to every story with attention and affection, and today I've decided to tell my story. I'm not going to reveal my name, to protect myself and my family in case this story gets to bigger places. But I hope that my experience will touch someone who needs to hear it. When my husband was arrested, my life was turned upside down. I never imagined that something like this could happen to me. The house that was once full of life became empty. The silence was so heavy that it seemed to fill every corner, slowly suffocating me. I tried to move on, pretending that everything was fine, but the truth was different. He was far away and I was left there, alone, facing my fears, my insecurities, and a longing that seemed to have no end. It was at this difficult time that my sister offered me help. She invited me to spend some time with her, my niece Megan, and her brother Brad. The house wasn't big, but it had a human warmth that I needed. The laughter of the children, the constant movement, everything seemed to bring me back to life. The idea of being surrounded by people who cared about me seemed like the best choice. I accepted it, thinking that this environment would help me heal the pain. But little did I know, I was about to discover something completely different, something that would change the course of my story. But I soon realized that instead of finding relief, I was entering a whirlwind of emotions that I didn't know how to control. Brad started spending more time at home. Before, he had been busy with college, but suddenly he seemed to find reasons to stay there. This change touched me more than I'd like to admit. He was older than Megan, which only intensified the way his presence seemed to occupy every corner. There was something about him that deeply disconcerted me, that fixed, intense gaze, which seemed to strip me of all masks, to see me in a way that no one else did. At first it bothered me, as if he knew something about me that even I didn't understand. I tried to ignore it. I convinced myself that it was nonsense, a silly attraction, like those that come and go without leaving a mark. After all, he was just my sobri. There was no reason for it to affect me. But whenever he looked at me, whenever our gazes met by chance, I felt my heart racing, my skin tingling, as if he had the power to ignite something inside me that I thought had been extinguished for a long time. I felt out of place in my own skin, as if I were trying to fit into something that was no longer mine. But when he was around, everything changed. I felt different, alive, as if a part of me that had been forgotten and stored away was finally awakening. He made me feel wanted, and that was frightening and irresistible at the same time. The moments with him were full of silent tension, small gestures that seemed insignificant, but carried something more. One day, while I was in the living room, he passed behind me and, without meaning to, his hand brushed lightly against my waist. It was a quick, almost innocent touch, but my body reacted as if it were much more than that. My breath caught in my throat, and when I turned around, he was already walking into another room, as if nothing had happened. And then there was that smile. Oh, that smile! It was the kind of smile that made my mind race to places I shouldn't explore. He knew it. I could feel it. There was a subtle malice in the way he looked at me, as if he was waiting for the right moment to see how far I could take it before surrendering. It was impossible to ignore. He knew the effect he was having, and perhaps that's why I felt so vulnerable. Every word we exchanged seemed to carry a hidden meaning, a promise that hung between us as yet unspoken. The worst, or perhaps the best, was the feeling that he wasn't just flirting. He looked at me in a way that made my heart race, my skin heat up, and everything inside me begged for something I didn't have the courage to admit, and that was exactly what scared me. The possibility that he wanted more, that he knew exactly what was going on inside me, because deep down I knew. It wasn't just a passing attraction. It was something more, something that grew with every look, every smile, every little interaction, and I no longer knew if I had the strength to fight it. Everything changed that day. My sister and niece left for the market, and Brad and I were left alone at home. The room was silent, but charged with intensity, as if the air had become denser, heavier. When he entered the room and our gazes met, I knew something was about to happen. I didn't need words to know what he was thinking. I could see it in his gaze, in that deep, penetrating glint he always had when he watched me. And at the same time, I knew that he knew exactly what I was feeling. The tension between us was almost unbearable, like a thread about to snap. and I knew I couldn't deny it any longer, no matter how hard I tried. The silence between us became heavier, and the sound of my accelerated breathing filled the space. He approached slowly, unhurriedly, as if it were possible to savor every second of that closeness. I could no longer shake the feeling that we were about to cross a line of no return. When his hands touched mine, it was as if a spark had ignited in my body, sending my heart racing. I felt an electricity coursing through my veins, a growing desire that I had been trying to ignore for a long time. The sensation was so intense that, for a moment, I thought my body might explode from wanting him so much. He looked me in the eye, and everything I could have said disappeared. There was no more room for words, only for touch, for warmth, for desire. He leaned towards me, and when his lips finally met mine, the kiss was soft, but charged with an urgency that made my body surrender completely. It was as if he knew exactly where to touch me, how to make me lose control, and without any effort, he was taking me to a place where I could no longer resist. The intensity of the moment consumed me, and I wanted more. I wanted to feel more. I wanted to lose myself completely in that desire. There was no turning back. We knew what we were doing, and the only thing that mattered now was what came next. Little by little, we stripped ourselves bare, as if that was the only way to make desire overflow. His touch made me feel alive, more than I remembered being. Every movement was a new awakening. He knew my body in a way that made me lose myself, and when his hands explored every part of me, I felt intense pleasure, as if time no longer existed. With every touch, with every sigh, I gave myself more, without regret, without hesitation. And then I realized the man who was imprisoned, who had left me behind, wasn't there. He was in a cell while I lived, while I felt. I deserved this. I deserved to feel the warmth of a body next to me. I deserved to be touched and desired. I could no longer be bound by what he did or didn't do. What Brad gave me was something I needed, something that made me feel complete. And when he made me reach my limit, I knew I would never be the same again. When my sister and niece arrived, everything seemed normal to them. They were going about their routine, talking, laughing, and there was no sign that anything different had happened. But for me, the world seemed to have changed in a subtle but intense way. Something inside me had broken free, something that I hadn't known was trapped, that had been waiting for the opportunity to emerge. There was no regret, no guilt. I knew that the man I once called husband was paying for his choices, and I had the right to move on, to live my own life. I couldn't lose myself in what had passed, in what would never come again. He was in prison, but I didn't have to be. I knew that life didn't wait, that time didn't stop, and that I couldn't go on waiting for something that no longer depended on me. Brad made me realize this clearly. He made me feel alive again, something I had almost forgotten. Every moment I spent with him, every touch, every glance, rekindled a flame that I thought had gone out forever. While my sister and niece carried on with their routines, I knew that what happened between Brad and me wasn't just a mistake or a moment of weakness. It was an opportunity, a chance to start again, to give myself permission to feel, to experience something new. Life, with all its surprises and difficulties, still had so much to offer, and I couldn't get stuck in the circumstances that held me back. I was ready to live again, to open myself up to the unknown, to the possibility of a new beginning. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I didn't want to hide anymore. I deserved to be happy. I deserved to feel that freedom, and for the first time in a long time, I was willing to go for it. So here I am, scrolling back and forth on a dating app. I'm not looking for a husband, far from it. What I want is someone who can warm up my cold nights, who knows exactly how to fill the empty spaces in my life. A touch, a smile, a warm body that makes me forget, at least for a few hours, everything that's out of place. I'm still married, yes. But let's face it, marriage doesn't have to be a prison, right? Especially when my husband is, in fact, in prison. He doesn't need to know. You may judge me for this, but the truth is that living alone with so many repressed desires has left me on the verge of exploding. Do you agree with me? I think I deserve a little pleasure, a little real life, flesh, skin, sighs in the dark. Let me know in the comments what you think, because while you decide, I'll keep sliding to the right, hoping to find someone who's as daring as I'm willing to be.